really paying attention. That's one problem. Anyway, this is your host, Mystic Guide, Enlightenment Radio. We're on at 6 o'clock your time. Got any weather over there, French?
Yes.
It's we opened up with 49 degrees this morning here, but it warms up really quick. And we've got news. I've got an interesting report I'm going to start with from CNN. This is about that. It's 48 degrees where you are. Okay. Doesn't show any rain, just clouds. So this is the guy that Putin yanked out of his collar around 2014 or 15. The billionaire, the richest man in Russia, which proves it don't matter how rich you are in a dictatorship. If he wants to put you in prison and take your money and shut down your business, take it for himself, he'll do it. And that's exactly what he did with this man. And I'm sure a lot of you in the Ukraine are probably familiar with this story. News here seems to bubble up and then go away after about a week. So this guy was put in prison all this time. We'll find out when he got out. It's a CNN report, and we're going to start with that. And also, the Heart of Hope, Ukraine, the Heart of Hope. Your website is up. It's got stories up there too. We got one of our computers down that won't do the translating today. So, YouTube? Yeah, you can hear this on YouTube also. Go down to the corner of the Ukraine, theheartofhope.com. Click the YouTube channel. That may go into a translation. I'm not sure. Were they going to see the visuals of the news?
The visual of the news, I'm trying to get them fast as I can.
All right, well, don't worry about it. This is just an interview right here. We don't need any maps or visuals. But this guy, he looks like he's in pretty good shape, pretty good mood for having lost all of his money and lost all of his life by a dictator. Anyway, here we go. CNN interview. He looks like he's in pretty good shape, pretty good mood for having lost all of his money and lost all of his life by a dictator. Anyway, here we go. CNN interview.
I'm joined now by Mikhail Khodorkovsky, who was once Russia's richest man. In the early years of Putin's reign, Khodorkovsky became a prominent critic of the Kremlin before he was imprisoned for fraud and tax evasion, charges he says were politically motivated. He was released in 2013 and has been living outside Russia since then. Welcome, Mikhail Khodorkovsky. But before we begin, I want people to understand why I think you have real insight into how the Kremlin works. In 2003, you were the richest man in Russia. Brilliant businessman, you had run a whole bunch of businesses, and then you start criticizing the regime, and you say you may run against Putin for president. Within 6 months, your company has been taken away from you, the largest company in Russia. You are in prison, and you spent 10 years in prison.
They have that on
and the company is taken away through a complicated series of maneuvers where they claim tax fraud and stuff. Do you know how Putin operates?
The picture? The website.
Who has power in that system?
I can't see it. Black.
Is it possible that the oligarchs have enough power that they can pressure
trying to find a news
to change course, to withdraw from Ukraine?
This is a mistake, a mistaken presumption about how Russian power is arranged. Russian power is not an oligarchy. It's a dictatorship. And the oligarchs are merely, actually, not oligarchs, but merely agents of the Kremlin who are used by the Kremlin as a tool. So there is no feedback in the other direction to influence the dictator. They cannot do that in practical sense.
What about the military or other parts of the ruling elite, maybe the KGB, what is now the FSB, or the intelligence services or the army? Does anyone have power other than, Putin? He calls himself the vertical of power. Is there anybody outside of that vertical of power?
Ну, это скорее не вертикаль власти.
Most likely, it's not so much a vertical power, it's Putin power. Putin holds on to power by taking parts of the people around him and setting them off against each other. Of course, there are people that do have some influence on his mental perceptions, people such as Yuri Kovalchuk and those people who are around Yuri Kovalchuk. And of course, the military can tell Putin, and they are indeed telling him now, that we, in current conditions, cannot do the task that we've been assigned. And Putin has to take that into account. But the decision is made by him, of course.
So, what is the way to pressure Russia to get serious at the negotiating table?
К сожалению,
Unfortunately, no other advice can be given here other than the courage of the Ukrainians
I'm
and
asking for YouTube
the
links at least for the
sanctions
two last
that
years.
undercut the
I'm asking
opportunities
for
for
YouTube
Putin
links, so at least I'm gonna
Oh, okay.
buy new
get
weapons
them.
and
Where
to
do you
hire mercenaries.
So, only force. Putin will only understand if there is pressure, if there is resistance from Ukraine,
This is
if
one
there are
right here.
sanctions from the West.
Right?
Yes, go to the history,
сожалению,
and I'll
Which
point
one?
it.
Tell me which
Unfortunately,
go to
he's
history and I'll
that kind of
point
a
it out.
person.
Okay.
All his life, he's always dealt with the criminal elements and was indeed himself part of that criminal world. He doesn't treat the law seriously, or state institutions for that matter. In his world, the main thing is force. And if you don't show him force, if he senses that you're weak, as he does, for example, about Mr. Macron, he simply takes advantage of you. When he feels force, when he's afraid of force,
Okay, that's
he's
the
ready
one.
to talk.
Or-
A lot of people have criticized Joe Biden for saying that he wished Vladimir Putin were no longer in power.
Which one? That's
The
one?
argument is you have to negotiate with him. You're going to have to sign a deal with him.
Finally done,
And so
Ukraine
this would
destroyed,
complicate things.
finally done,
That's,
Ukraine, yeah,
that's
that's
the one
it.
playing. What's the next one?
That's the next one,
That's the next one?
yeah.
And what's the
They've
next
also
underneath?
done a lot of criticizing of Mr. Biden, but from a different perspective. I think that
Go
his
back.
words are absolutely correct and very important.
No, go back to this
First
one.
of all, they're important because people
one?
in the world, all over the world, are waiting,
Hold
are
on a
expecting
second.
an ethical assessment
Hello?
from the leader of the free world. And
Yes.
when this leader gives this ethical assessment, that is important. His assessment that such people should not be in power. It's understandable that only the Kremlin and maybe the White House interpreted these words as Mr. Biden being ready to personally remove the Russian president. Everybody else understood it correctly. It was an ethical assessment.
Because it
Russians
didn't
are going to
work.
remove Russia's
Cockroaches are
president.
still, I'm live on the
Another
air, sir.
second
Call me
important
back
thing is-
later on.
That Mr. Putin perceives
I didn't want milk.
this
But what
approach,
did an Alka-Seltzer?
without the show of force as weakness. And so when Mr. Biden said that using weapons, that there's going to be an appropriate response to the use of weapons of mass destruction, that's not a provocation for Putin.
Barbara,
That's something
I got a
that
cuff in
puts
here.
brakes on his,
Never mind.
desires. And on the other hand, when Mr. Schultz or Mr. Macron says that there's no way that we should take part in a clash with Putin's forces, that actually encourages Putin to use weapons of mass destruction. This is a fundamental lack of understanding of the mentality of a person who has been among criminals all his life.
So Putin is now facing obstacles in Ukraine. Given what you know of his mentality, what is he going to do? Is he going to turn Ukraine into Chechnya, destroy it? Is he going to back away? What do you think his options are?
Для него
For him, the situation today is very complicated. At first, what he wanted was to change the power in Kiev, put in his puppet, and was expecting that this would be met with flowers thrown in the streets by Ukrainian people. When this did not happen, he went crazy. The fact that the people in Kharkov did not meet him with flowers, it not only just angered him, I really think it drove him literally insane. That's when he started bombing Kharkiv and Kiev. Right now, he has three options that face him, three ways out. First way out is to continue pressuring Ukraine and probably losing
Did you find
troops
the third one yet?
in this
You didn't
process
give me the
because
third
the
one. You gave me
Ukrainians
only
are
one.
fighting back ever more
there's
strongly
one
with
more.
every day. Secondly, he could use weapons of mass destruction in the hope that this would force the Ukrainians to retreat. And the third option is to start actual negotiations. When Mr. Biden, when NATO officials say that in one voice that if Mr. Putin if you use WMDs, you will get an
Okay, I see
appropriate
him
response
now. It's,
from NATO. That actually
one here.
gives Putin only one choice: to sit down for real at the negotiating table.
This guy here, he looks like
Let me
this
ask you,
guy. He's got a
we're not
flag
thinking a lot about this, but
in front of him.
if Putin somehow comes out of this
Second one?
strong,
talk
He'll be
the
first in line
Ukrainians
now.
have to concede
Okay.
Your history.
That's the second
on a
one.
number of issues.
I mean,
That's the last one.
do you
that's the
think
last
he
story.
has greater
What's the next
ambitions
story?
that he could
The
at
one I
some
just
point
gave you.
Okay.
attack the Baltic
Not
states
that
or
one,
Poland?
but the
мы должны понимать.
Enchi.
We must
Thank you.
understand
This
that
one
in his
here.
head, Putin is at war not with Ukraine. He's at war with the United States and NATO. He said this more than once.
Yeah, this
His
one here.
propagandists have
This-
already
this is the
started to
next
prepare
story. The
Russian
next- this is the last
society
story.
for an attack on NATO countries. They're constantly talking about this, and this is the preparation of Russian public opinion. for
Wow,
this. I'm
618
absolutely
listening.
convinced that
At least
if
we got an
Putin
audience.
decides that he has won in Ukraine, this is not going to be the last step, the last war. The next steps will be the Baltic countries.
I've always wanted to ask you this question because I figure you probably can answer it better than almost anybody. What do you think Vladimir Putin is worth in terms of all the money he has been able to take out of Russia personally?
Путин в течение долгого
You should not
времени
sink
For a
all
long
the-
time,
Every time I sink, I
was
open
a
two.
person that
stop
was
at the same
money
time.
oriented. But as with many elderly criminals, he now has a mission in his head. And that is actually way more scary. His mission, under which he has to show the whole world that he is great, that he is leaving the world a legacy. That's a lot scarier.
Yeah, well, I
than
know
when
what's
he
gonna
was just,
stop him, his
gathering money.
ego.
Right now, I think money is not going to stop him.
It's gonna get too big. He's gonna. These guys, you give them enough rope and they hang themselves. It happens every time. Did not Adolf Hitler do that? He wanted more and more and more. That title of that James Bond movie is perfect. The world is not enough. The world is not enough. I love that title. And it's not going to be enough for Putin. And he's going to run into someone, somebody, just like Caesar did, just like Napoleon did. We'll be right back.
I'm really not allowed to. You got to change the computer.
Just like Caesar did, just like Napoleon did. We'll be right back.
You are in tune to Enlightenment Radio, home of the ultimate knowledge of body, soul, and spirit, and unlimited music 24/7.
Couldn't even copy that. Wow.
I can enter the password if you need that.
No, I wanted to copy the
It's still pasting from Michael Myers MacBook
yeah,
Pro.
because you see, it's It seems like you sync all your computer together.
Huh?
You sync all your computer together.
Be sure
How?
to visit our
I don't know,
website at
it's-
enlightenment-radio.com. There you can journey through the mystical voyage, and also
How?
view our
What did
schedule
I-
of
is it this
programming.
phone thing
Thank
this
you
morning?
for
That's why we have some problems every time.
So we're getting ready to do another news report,
I'm not able to copy that. I'm not able.
and Brisham Live. We're getting ready to do another news report. I don't have anything to share with you that shows any advantage that Russia is having in any of these battles. So I'm going to play this news report, and I wanted to play Take the Money and Run after that report, but I couldn't find it. I'll find it in a minute. Let's go.
So I'm going to play this news report, and I wanted to play Take the Money and Run after that report, but I couldn't find it. I'll find it in a minute. Let's go.
Welcome to The Journalist. In the late 20th century, conflicts increased air threats on a global scale. With the development of technology, both air defense systems and air threat elements have evolved. Air defense contributes to deterrence in peace and crisis, and to limit enemy air and missile attacks in war. In these days of the most violent conflicts of the 21st century, air defense systems are once again underlining their importance. In the relentless war between Russia and Ukraine, many air defense systems, especially the S-400 and S-300 batteries, are on the agenda. Russia relied a lot on the S-300 air defense systems. It was not thought that the Ukrainian armed forces could destroy the S-300S and even the S-400S until the war started. However, Ukrainian forces managed to destroy Russian S-300 and S-400 air defense systems with MiG-29 and Su-24 fighter jets, Bayraktar TB2, and even HIMARS artillery. So far, the destruction of about 24 Russian S-300 air defense systems and at least 7 S-400S has been published by the Ukrainian General Staff. According to open sources and the data of the Ukrainian General Staff, by June the Russians had confirmed the loss of 2 S-400S and 13 S-300 air defense systems. These losses seem to have increased as a result of Ukraine's recent operations in conjunction with the fall offensive. The war in Ukraine was taken to a new level with the arrival of HIMARS. Likewise, the arrival of Stormy Shadow in May and then Scalp and ATACMS in the fall took it to a whole new level. The initial offensive of the Ukrainian forces started with HIMARS and Stormy Shadow. This week, the Ukrainian Air Force, using Su-24 fighter jets and HIMARS, Stormy Shadow and ATACMS missiles, destroyed Vladimir Putin's favorite S-400S and S-300S, taking the war to a whole new level. As you know, the Ukrainian armed forces have launched a major offensive operation centered on Bakhmut, and fierce fighting is currently taking place in the Avdiivka area. The second wing of the Ukrainian offensive plan includes the southern front lines. In fact, the second wing of the plan has much more strategic objectives. Using the dominance in Kherson and liberating Crimea is the second tier of the Ukrainian armed forces' major offensive plans. For these reasons, Russia is very worried and does not want to withdraw from these areas and lose Crimea. Therefore, Russia has deployed its most robust air defense systems and reinforcements on Ukraine's southern front lines. In particular, Russia's S-400 air defense
download
systems
that
protect the
so
strategic
slow.
front line from Kherson to Crimea. The Russians are very confident in the S-400 defense systems. The Ukrainian Air Force has previously suggested that Russia is making greater use of the S-300 and S-400 missile systems to compensate for the lack of ballistic missiles. Russia has developed the S-400 system to replace the older S-300, although both are still in service. The S-400 system has a very high value, often located well behind the front lines where other artillery cannot reach. For the Russians, the S-400 defense systems are insurance for the front lines around Kherson and Crimea. But the Ukrainians have destroyed the Russian insurance. American-made HIMARS and ATACMS and the British Storm Shadow were largely responsible for this success. In recent weeks, Russian troops have lost at least 4 long-range surface-to-air missile launchers as a result of attacks by the Ukrainian Defense Forces. As you may recall, last week Ukrainian forces successfully hit a strategic target of the Russian occupiers' air defense system in the temporarily occupied Crimea on the west coast. Then Ukrainian forces destroyed the S-400 strategic air defense system near temporarily occupied Luhansk. Finally, with this loss suffered by Russia, these weapons, which are limited in the arsenal of the Russian army, have been recorded as a painful blow to the air defense system of the occupiers. Natalia Humanyuk, the head of the Joint Press Center of the Southern Forces of Ukraine, said that the army destroyed the enemy's potential, not only in terms of attack but also in terms of defense, and that a heavy blow was dealt to the invaders and gave the message that it will continue. UK Defense Intelligence reported on intelligence data. British Defense Intelligence reported on the destruction of 3 SA-21 launchers placed by the interventionists in the occupied Luhansk region of Ukraine.
Now
The
I'm
British
getting
Ministry
messages
of Defense,
from Google
Ukrainian
in
sources
Ukrainian
reported
language.
additional losses of Russian air defense in Crimea. The publication
Google chat.
also notes that the Russian Federation has
Holy
long
shit.
prioritized a sufficient number of high-tech long-range air defense systems
So
as
I
an
have to take
important
that to
component
Apple
of
or
its
back to
military
just this
strategy.
local person?
Recent losses show that Russia's
no, you just have
integrated
to
air
change the
defense
language.
system continues the
Do
fight
what?
against
You wanna
modern
change the
precision
languages?
strike weapons and will likely increase
No,
the
to fix
already
that
significant
back.
pressure on the remaining systems and
Or
operators,
the
the
laptop?
report says.
That,
The ministry
iMac
also
is
noted
sitting
that
in
there
front
is
of it. What I gotta
a
do to fix
realistic
it?
possibility
Take it
that
in
Russia
the
will
shop?
replace
I
systems
think it's
destroyed
slow,
in
but we
Ukraine
gotta-
while weakening air
it's either
defenses
you're
in other
using that only
operational
to-
areas. Also last week, one
just
more
do
Russian S-400
what you
air
wanna do?
defense
OB
system defending
OBS and don't
Crimea
use
was
any
destroyed by
other
ATACMS in
stuff with
Kherson.
it. Sometimes you
Earlier,
gotta
it
use
was
that
confirmed by both the
proprietary, so,
Ukrainian
this
and
is
Russian
for-
defense
Proprietary?
ministries
Yeah.
that 2
Proprietary,
Russian
like-
S-400 air defense systems in
Shouldn't
Crimea
have to be
were
that way
loaded
on
by
the
Storm
internet.
Shadow missiles. Looking at the state of
gives
the
me
war,
problem now,
it is
it's
clear
like-
that Russia has really overestimated its military in every respect. Russian air defense systems are weak. The system
I'm
may
going
be
to be
good in a
leaving in
strategic sense,
20,
but their
15,
famous
18
long-range
minutes.
systems, such as the
what should I
S-300,
tell them?
S-350, and especially
What's
the
it, just put
S-400
the news
Triumph,
and-
show that they cannot
I'll
counter
leave
such
you
missiles.
with,
On the other hand, Ukrainian
songs.
defenders continue to eliminate more and more Russian
And,
invaders. An attack was launched on the
I'll leave you
positions
with
of the
some
invaders
songs,
near
and
the
you sign off
temporarily
at
occupied
top of the
city
hour.
of Mariupol. Ukrainian
Enlightenment
fighters
Radio,
regularly
same time,
target
see you
enemy
tomorrow,
fortified
same
positions
time.
with infantry,
11,
heavy equipment, ammunition depots, and trucks used by Russians
Well,
to
it's
transport
11,
ammunition,
6
food,
p.m.
and
your
troops
time.
to the front line. Ukrainian armed forces soldiers hit enemy headquarters. So why has Russia relied so heavily on the S-400 air defense system for so long? And what makes
You
these
going out?
systems special?
You going
The
out?
S-400 Triumph, also known by its NATO report name SA-21 Growler, is a mobile platform that the Center for Strategic
So
and
now I gotta
International
take this
Studies,
into
a
Verizon
U.S. think
and have
tank,
them
describes
transfer
as
it over.
roughly comparable to the
together.
U.S. Patriot system.
You know, they say,
The
oh, it's real easy.
S-400
Just turn,
is a
just
mobile
look into the
surface-to-air
same,
missile
Wi-Fi
system
and they'll
developed
transfer.
in the
No,
late
nothing happens.
1990s by Russia's Almaz Naval Engineering Center Design Bureau
I
as
heard
an
say
upgrade
that.
of the S-300. Russian state military exporter Rosoboronexport said the S-400 is capable of destroying all types of air targets and ballistic missiles. According to Russian state media, its estimated range is about 400 kilometers or about 250 miles.
I'm telling you, everything is filled full right now. So I don't know why. Why is things so bad? That's what going to on the TVs. Find a number.
Oh, we're at 706. 706. Good
And
on
to
him,
provide
Sid.
automated control of the separate air
Where are
defense
they?
missile systems and combinations that make up the air defense grouping. The system's command post cannot save the shorter range air defense system that is supposed to cover the S-400 as part of its echeloned air defense. These include the Pantsir S-1 air defense system,
They're all
which
over
is
the
used in the
map.
ranks of the Russian Air Force precisely for such tasks.
36 in Los
In other
Angeles.
words, by destroying the Russian
Texas,
S-400 air
Houston,
defense system,
Miami,
the characteristics
York.
of which we have already mentioned, Ukraine has proved that there is no need to make such a big
This is
deal
my
about the
radio
state-of-the-art
station, Barbara.
weapons and missile systems in the Russian army, which Vladimir Putin boasts about.
In the dream.
In conclusion, there is no end in sight for the Ukrainian war for the time being. Both countries are gathering their forces for counterattacks. According to Russian media reports, the Russian Defense Ministry is likely preparing for a massive recruitment campaign. The aim will be to recruit 400,000 professional soldiers, which is different from the mobilization of reserves that the Kremlin has ordered in the past. But rebuilding Russia's fighting force in Ukraine will require more than just personnel. Russia needs more ammunition and military equipment than is currently available. However, there is currently a significant shortage of modern weapon systems and ammunition in Russia, and any new contingent will have to make do with obsolete systems like the World War II designs the Kremlin is currently sending to the front lines. Vladimir Putin's war in Ukraine is about to turn into a historical disaster. Both the loss of the S-300 air system and a series of failures on the front lines are destroying the Russian leader's war
These
strategies.
reports
We
are
will see
coming
in the
in from
coming days
experts
what will be the
when he
next move of
says
Putin,
we are about
who
to
does not
witness
give up despite the
worst
failures and
disaster
casualties.
and defeat
Thank
by
you for
Vladimir
watching us.
Putin in his history.
These reports.
Now that man knows what he's talking about.
He says
He's not making this up. He's analyzed it. He went through the whole map. I know you couldn't see it. Go see it on YouTube. It's
now that man knows what he's talking.
let me give the name of that
He's
YouTube,
not making this up. He's analyzing.
and it'll be on our
See it. Go see it on
Spotify podcast. Just go there in a couple days. It'll be in the Ukrainian language.
YouTube.
These guys, I haven't found one that's outside of a ABC talking head news and analysis
Ukrainian language.
that doesn't know jack squat about war. All they know about is
Outside of a ABC
cocktail parties in Washington D.C. with politicians rubbing elbows. That's all they know about. So,
all they know about.
in lieu of that last interview with the richest man in Russia was taken in prison, here's what I say he should have done.
That's all they know about. So,
Take the money and run.
that last interview with the richest man in Russia was taken in prison. Here's what I say he should have done. Take the money and run.
So the next one is the Ukraine admits we are across the DM. Could you open your YouTube? The next one is with the flag. With the flag.
Yes.
Okay. Then I'm gonna get that ready.
Okay, our next story. Pick it up. Okay, our next story. Pick it up.
Is Ukraine expanding its Dnipro bridgehead even as Russia throws more troops into useless offensives? Just how deep can the Ukrainians get? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. It's November 15th, 2023. This is your daily Ukraine update. Let's get into it. Okay, first, on the control map, there's been only... this no man's land, but occupying the two salients around it. I think this is sort of semantics, right? As we've seen, the fighting
they're
is
sync,
really
but they're not
troops
sync. I'm
concentrated
getting
in
messages
these
failing
forested
to
areas,
send
strong points.
that used to
So
send off the
calling this
computer.
no man's land or calling
Something
Russian
got
control
screwed
is
up
sort of
with
semantics.
these fucking
But
phones.
the real takeaway here
That's what
is
happened.
what isn't happening, which is anything, right? We've seen Russian forces make in the last couple days these considerable pushes in and around Yadhine to the north of Bakhmut. We've also seen Russian forces its Dnipro bridgehead, even as Russia throws more troops into useless offensives. Just how deep can the Ukrainians get? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. It's November 15th, 2023. This is your daily Ukraine update. Let's get into it. Okay, first, on the control map, there's been only minor frontline updates, which itself I thought was really telling for a couple of reasons. Most notably, the only real change has been out here in Bakhmut with a small revision of Russian forces, right, not occupying this no man's land, but occupying the two salients around it. I think this is sort of semantics, right? As we've seen, the fighting is really with troops concentrated in these forested areas, strong points. So calling this no man's land or calling it Russian controlled is sort of semantics. But the real takeaway here is what isn't happening, which is anything, right? We've seen Russian forces make in the last couple days these considerable pushes in and around Yadhine to the north of Bakhmut. We've also seen Russian forces continue to make sort of piecemeal, hodgepodgey advances around Avdiivka without actually putting pressure on the town itself. And so the fact that Russia seems to be losing steam and needs to refit, re-equip, and replan its attacks and have longer intervals between their assaults where they make more and more minor gains is itself actually good news for Ukraine. It says that they've absorbed probably the worst of the Russian offensive actions and haven't really lost much territory as a result. I think you'll still see some incremental gains by Russian forces. They're not going to stop this easily, and Russia seems to have a deep well of troops, but I think the risk of a major breakthrough is pretty low. Can't really say the same about the Russian forces, though. There are a lot of rumors, first off, that you can see Russian forces launching 57 combat engagements spread out across the entirety of the Eastern Front line, heavily concentrated around Avdiivka. I mean, this is a lot of offensive work around Avdiivka, a lot of offensive work around Bakhmut, and of course a smattering around the northern Kharkiv area. But I think the takeaway here again is that Russia really trying to continue its offensive push, but it's every one of these offensive actions, while they are a lot, they're also pretty anemic at the same time. You can see Ukrainian forces taking down a Russian Su-25 in and around Avdiivka. But here's what I thought was most interesting. Again, you can see that there are what it says guided bombs, so likely aircraft strikes against Ukrainian positions in Berslav, which is noteworthy because it is very, very near, again, probably a staging area for Ukrainian actions in and around Kherson. And this is sort of the thing I wanted to make note of, is that you can see Russian air assets are few and far between. And so when you do see them, again, you see them in places like Avdiivka, Bakhmut. And so something is happening here that warrants Russia deploying its limited air assets, like we talked about yesterday. Well, when we look at, according to Euromaidan Press, which bear in mind, this is an explicitly pro-Ukraine channel, but reportedly, Ukrainian troops have widened their bridgehead in the Dnipro east of the Kherson Oblast. and that this bridgehead has been
Yes,
steadily
I'm just
expanding.
dropping you off
There's been a
right
lot of footage online of
you know what?
these operations, and it appears that Ukrainian forces are able to cross the bridge relatively unopposed. Now, have they solved the question of how to get thousands of troops and tons of material across the bridge? Not yet, but they're starting to. They're using armored amphibious vehicles to move light infantry troops and can move some tanks and armored vehicles with these this ferry system. But the further they expand that bridgehead and the longer out it goes, the more Ukraine is going to be able to systematize and increase the scale of these ferry operations taking place. And that might be their strategy. They might just say, hey, listen, we're going to deploy more and more of these ferries and pontoon systems until we are confident we can establish like a pontoon bridge or something of that like to really move these troops and material across. Now,
5-7 minutes left
you can
here.
see there's a lot of footage. I'm going to try not to get demonetized by showing too much of it, but I want you to take the takeaway I want you guys to have is of this photo right here. So this is saying possible ways to expand the bridgehead. I'm less interested in that and more interested in the fact that it seems like this bridgehead is in and around this town of Krinky. Let's see if we can take a look at it here when we zoom in. So here's Krinky here. And you can see that according to this, this long sort of riverside town is probably now in Ukrainian hands from this account. And this again is going to be a real challenge because you can see here there's this marshland they have to cross at the Dnipro, but they've got to pour resources into Krinky and begin to expand their bridgehead in different directions. Now, the territory has some advantages and some disadvantages. Big advantage, all this wood line, right? It's going to be hard to see overhead when Ukrainian forces move through. The catch is that it's also easy to defend. It's fairly easy to dig into this extensive wooded area, and Ukraine itself is going to have a tough time using its artillery to grind out Russian forces. You can also see that when we zoom in, Krinky, the town itself, doesn't actually lead into this wood line here. So they're going to have to get access to some of these roadways. Now, another option is, of course, to jump over to Kozachi Lahari, and then from here, try to use these two towns as a bridgehead around the Dnipro. When we zoom out, you can see, right, the deepest part of the Ukrainian counteroffensive, right, the most penetration we've seen from Ukrainian forces has stretched, it looks like about 10 kilometers into Russian territory, about 8.5. So for perspective, 8.5 is going to look like, let's close this out here, to match that effort, right, which was taken at, to be clear, pretty tremendous cost. To get 8 kilometers in to Krinky is going to take, let's see, just about right here. So this is a very, very deep forested region, which again could be to Ukraine's advantage or to their disadvantage. If you wanted to punch that deep in from Kozachi Lahari, you see here it's going to take, honestly, not the sort of tremendous effort that you might expect, especially given the fact that Russia has put very little effort into mining a lot of these areas, a lot of these regions. So I actually am fairly optimistic. You may see a substantial breakthrough in and around this region, given that Russia just doesn't seem that prepared for it. Again, the biggest question is, you can see this is hilly terrain, this is forested terrain, and in some ways it's very advantageous for an attacker to have this overhead cover, but in some ways it's very, very advantageous to a defender. So I think you're going to see Ukraine try to rope in a lot of these villages here before trying to really make a larger push, and probably not into these forested regions. I suspect they might go towards Pidstepine, Pristyanivka, and Poima, and try to really surge right down here. You can see if they can do so, getting into these roadways, clearing them is going to really potentially produce a lot of desirable effects. And then, the thing to talk about is that a lot of these elements guarding here, this is very thinly defended. You can see an intelligence brigade, which isn't really going to have infantry, but you can see a regiment, a battalion, a regiment, 70th, and Shoigists. So this is not the elite VDV who've been deployed and are trying to contain Ukrainian forces here in the Robotine-Verbova region. So, if Ukraine can get this at scale, I don't think this is going to have the tremendous Russian resistance that we've seen in from other fronts, right? Particularly Zaporizhzhia, right? A frontal assault into the region that Russia has maximally prepared for defense. Very, very curious to see what the next week or so will bring. Now, if you guys want to support a company, a veteran-owned company owned by, me, you want to check out Strike Gum. This is a caffeine gum, an energy gum, 0 sugar, 90 milligrams of caffeine in every piece. If you're checking it out at the store, you might notice that that's more caffeine than a Red Bull, and that's in each one of these individual pieces. It's manufactured here in the USA. We have veterans and military discounts. You can check us out at strikegum.com, and best of all, 50% of the profits from this first production run. Again, I'm more optimistic than many that this is going to lead to something bigger and better. Anyway, guys, that's all I had. Thank you so much. Thanks to our Colonel tier members at combatvetnews.com. Thanks to our Lieutenant tier members. I couldn't do this without all you guys. Be sure to hit like and subscribe. Thank you so much. See you in the next one.
Nothing like a good spanky.
Thank you to tune in to Enlightenment Radio. Mystic Guide will be in tomorrow to resume. So I'm your host right now, Frenchie, aka Ronnie Donovan. He already put me with some music, so I'm gonna go ahead and continue with the music. Yes, yes, yes. That was Jeff Beck. Don't forget that. Jeff Beck also, he's a friend of, Jimmy Page, Led Zeppelin. Okay, so what I want to say, I would like to say thank you to people to tune in. And so most likely tomorrow will be at 6 p.m. your time, and our time is 11 a.m. In the meantime, I'm going to leave you with some music, like the guide, Mr. God will do. In the meantime, I wish you, drive safely, and Ukraine will be free. Ukraine will be free. I predict that hopefully before 2024, Ukraine have to be free. So let's go ahead and with the music, Top Gun.